backbench spokesperson, Danny Kruger.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. So it's been a very good debate, and I'm very grateful to all honourable members who've contributed on all sides. It's still no clearer to us what the government thinks or intends to do about the two-child cap, but it's been very good to hear so many strong voices from this side of the House for and against the two-child limit. Of course, we really don't know what the Prime Minister himself thinks. He campaigned for the Labour leadership on a promise to scrap the two-child limit. Then, in order to win the general election, he campaigned to keep the two-child limit, and now, under pressure from his backbenchers, and once again I pay tribute to the real powers in the Labour Party, he is hinting that he's going to scrap it after all, at a cost of £3.5 billion. And add to that the £4.5 billion they have to find because they abandoned their welfare reforms, and the £1.3 billion they lost when they U-turned on the winter fuel payment. That's £9.3 billion they're going to have to find this autumn. Happy to give way.
I thank him for giving way. I'd like to clear up some of what the Prime Minister and this government believes in. Expanding free school meals so that more than 3,000 children in Bracknell Forest will be eligible. Expanding Best Start family hubs, something the previous government never funded in Bracknell Forest. Expanding Warm Home Scheme. Rolling out free breakfast clubs in primary schools. Limited expensive school uniform to 3 branded items.
Order!
Reform voted against.
The honourable gentleman should know that interventions must not be his speech read out at speed. Danny Kruger.
I'm very grateful for his recitation, much of which was Conservative policy, now rebranded by the Labour government, and and of course not, and the rest of it, further spending commitments. Madam Deputy Speaker, they are incapable of cutting spending, and so we know where this is headed. Tax rises in the autumn, and of course tax rises we're going to have on wealth. Madam Deputy Speaker, we know what wealth is. It's the product of economic success. It's what happens when people have risked their capital and they make things that people want. Wealth makes more jobs, higher wages, it makes more tax revenues, it means we can reduce debt, it means we invest in more businesses, and wealth taxes which are coming are going to mean less of all of that. And that is the Labour way, circling the drain, and then we're going down to national bankruptcy. That's what wealth taxes and welfare spending lead us to. And the rest of the House seems to support this plan. Happy to give way.
I thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. According to the latest DWP data, over 11,800 children in my constituency of Dewsbury and Backley are living in poverty. This is not abstract, it's not inevitable, it's a direct result of policy choices by the previous government and the maintenance of that policy under the current government. One parent shared, and I quote,
Can I please urge people to make interventions short, pithy, not pre-prepared and read out? Danny Kruger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'll come in a moment to the question of child poverty and recognise the point the honourable gentleman is making. I was just referring, though, to the fact that all the parties except ours seem to support, and indeed it's unclear what the front bench thinks, seem to support lifting this cap. So the Lib Dems, who can't seem to see a spending opportunity without grabbing it with both hands, and the honourable member, their spokesman, he spent £4.5 billion just in his speech earlier this afternoon. And of course, got the SNP, who have presided over higher economic inactivity, lower employment than England, have missed all of their targets for child poverty, and they still clamour for more money for welfare. And then, of course, there's the Reform Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, sadly absent today. Now, I do quite like the Reform Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I agree with them on lots of things. But there is a problem. There is a problem. There is a problem. The problem is this. They would spend money like drunken sailors. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am worried. In fact, I see what's happening. I'm very worried about it. They're going to end up in an electoral pact with the Liberal Democrats. There's a joint ticket to protect welfare spending. I don't know how honourable members feel about the anticipated alliance. Now, Madam, the honourable gentleman and others, particularly members opposite, have cited widening poverty rates in the last decade or more. I mean, this point of 4.5 million children was repeatedly raised. Madam Deputy Speaker, they're talking about relative poverty. And the fact is that relative poverty increased under the last government because overall the economy grew, because more people became more prosperous. And as the median income rises, more people come under it. That's how it works. So if relative poverty goes down under this government, it'll be because they shrank the economy. It's highly likely, Madam Deputy Speaker, but it's no great achievement for them to boast of. Relative poverty is not a measure of anything except the operation of the law of averages. So what we need to look at is real poverty, absolute poverty. And because we rescued the public finances and grew the economy, absolute poverty went down under the Conservatives. And talking of children, the percentage of children in absolute poverty after housing costs, that fell between 2010 and 2024. We got 800,000 people out of absolute poverty. We averted over 1 million more people falling into absolute poverty. We had more people in work, a higher employment rate, fewer workless households than since records began. Madam Deputy Speaker, we should thank the honourable member for Chingford and Woodford Green for that. Mention was made of Wilberforce and Disraeli, Madam Deputy Speaker. One day they will add the name of Duncan Smith to that great record. Happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
Order. The right honourable member for Chingford.
Right. It just doesn't flow as well, but yes.
Murphy.
Thank the shadow spokesman for giving way. In 2023, he said that the narrative that the public has firmly adopted, that over 13 years things have got worse, is one we just have to acknowledge and admit. Does he now still acknowledge and admit that he said that and that things got worse under his government?
Hello, Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm glad for him, grateful to his archaeology for my previous quote. Of course, that many things did get worse over the last decade and a half. Of course, I recognise that. Much of it just because of the consequences of the global financial meltdown that his party presided over, and that we spent many painful years fixing the deficit that they left us. I just want to, Madam Deputy Speaker, quickly cite another important fact, talking about the previous government's record, talking about young people, and members opposite have boasted of the new Labour years. In 1997, youth unemployment stood at 650,000. By the time Blair and Brown had finished in 2010, it was up a third to 940,000. And then 14 years later, when we left office, we'd almost halved it, down to 560,000, lower even than in 1997. That is the Conservative record. Right, now I will conclude shortly, Madam Deputy Speaker. I say to those who want to lift the cap across the House, consider what you're asking. You're asking taxpayers, working people, who pay more in tax than they receive in public services, people who themselves have had to take agonising decisions about whether or not they can afford to have another child, given the taxes that they pay, to fund the benefits for other people who receive more from the system than they pay in. Happy to give way.
The honourable gentleman makes the point about the state funding children. Does he accept that 1 million children, 1 million families have children of 3 or more that receive child benefit presently? And if he accepts that point, he's a father of 3, as I am. If he accepts that point, does he not accept the principle that actually those children come first under child benefit? And what's the difference between child benefit and universal credit? Can he tell us, does he want to cap child benefit at 2 children?
The difference is that child benefit is paid to everybody. There's no incentive in the system. The child benefit is a universal entitlement, and the fact what we need to ensure is that we are not adding to the incentives in the system to live a life on benefits. And I fully recognise the point the honourable gentleman makes. But let me proceed. When I say that some people receive more from the system than they pay in, I'm not trying to stigmatise those people. And the point has been thrown at us. That is not the case. I'm not stigmatising people who receive more in benefits than they pay in tax. Life isn't all about whether you're a net fiscal contributor or not. And indeed, I agree with points made by some members that we should be thinking more about social structures than about fiscal transfers. But I do say that when it comes to fiscal policy, there is a limit. Reciprocity matters. And when we're talking about money, it is right that people living on benefits face something of the same realities as people who pay for themselves. So we still have too many families trapped in welfare, Madam Deputy Speaker. And what we need is more families, and yes, larger families, supporting themselves through well-paid work. We need a tax system like that in Europe, in America, across the world, that recognises families. And we made an important step here in government with the changes to the high-income child benefit charge, which was scrapped by Labour. So the best thing we can do for families is to get the tax system right, and crucially the labour market and the wider economy right, so we have good growth, good jobs, high wages, flexible childcare and strong communities. Happy to give way, and then I'll finish.
The honourable gentleman talks about trade-offs in public finances, growth and child poverty. But in the period since 2015-16, there was zero progress on absolute poverty, zero progress on relative poverty, public finances ruined and growth flat. Does he not think the central trade-off was between a Tory government and a thriving country?
Danny Kruger.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I mean, the story of the last 14 years are quite easily told. In 2010, there was a budget deficit of 9%. We had almost fiscal bankruptcy. We spent 10 years very painfully restoring the public finances at great cost. I totally understand it. And then we were back down to the balanced budget. And then what happened is COVID hit, and we spent the last 5 years trying to recover from that. And on welfare, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a very, very proud record of reducing unemployment and making work pay. And what happened since COVID is that we have this great problem of disability and sickness benefits. So that is the challenge that we were undertaking to fix as we left office, and this party, the government, has now completely failed to conclude. So let me finish. It's not too late. I'm glad to see the Minister here. His review should not wait until next autumn. We need it this autumn. We need proper plans to fix the welfare system, not just increase spending as the government is now doing. And I urge honourable members across the House to support the motion that we have laid. And let me be clear, every member who doesn't is voting for welfare dependency and national bankruptcy. Only the Conservatives have a plan to fix it. Thank you.